Have you seen our Maze Runner video?
How many did it have by now?
900. I don't know why. I
That's
seriously
epic!
don't know why.
It's because we talked about gays.
The male gays?
No.
There are no gay people in Maze Runner.
If you're Annie, there are.
Oh,
Newt
well,
and Thomas are showing love.
in Annie's headcanon, every character is gay.
Yeah, that's true.
Hey, nice. No! Mallory, that's a sin. That's the devil's finger. The devil's finger sounds like a horrible sex act. That would be in this book.
Oh! Yeah, that's true. Probably. There's time for that. There's 5
The
books.
devil's finger.
No! Stop!
Hello, and welcome to the Your Favorite Book podcast. I'm Tanner.
I'm Mallory.
We're siblings.
And we like books.
And on today's episode, Mallory forced me to read Fourth Wing
I did it, you guys.
by Rebecca Yarros.
I did it for the girlies.
You did it to harm me.
I did!
So I will get my revenge by making you feel horrible about liking this book.
Yes,
It's the worst
I
thing
deserve
ever.
it. I will say, before we read this book, I said, Tanner, you're gonna hate this book.
And I said,
Do it
"Bet.
anyway.
Challenge me."
And I was mostly correct in some aspects, but
in
not all
some
of
aspects
them.
you're right, but in others you weren't.
Okay, good.
I'm really not gonna hate on this book.
Okay.
I didn't hate it.
Okay.
I didn't want to read it at times, but there were honest to goodness moments when I did feel compelled to read.
Good.
So this is one of those books where it's like, I would probably not have finished it if it weren't for this podcast.
Yes.
But I didn't notice anything like egregious in terms of like storytelling mistakes or character errors. It was just kind of a enjoyable read for me.
Good.
The things that knocked me out of the story, we will get into.
Yes, please.
And without those things, I think I would have enjoyed it more. But that's just a personal taste thing, not because I think it's like a bad book
Yeah.
necessarily.
Yeah.
But we should talk a bit about what this is. I mean, everyone knows what Fourth Wing is.
Yes.
It was a massive sensation.
It went huge on TikTok last summer. Like, so
The summer of
huge.
2023.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
was last summer.
I'm just saying we should date it because people might watch this podcast.
Yes, in the summer of 2023.
Because our podcast will last forever.
Yeah, it is. We're going to
Yeah.
keep going until we die, and then our ghosts will make the podcast.
That'd be cool.
That'd be fun.
Ghost cast.
This book went huge on TikTok and then became a New York Times bestseller for, I don't know exactly how long, but so long that it was still on the New York Times bestseller list. And then the second book came out and they both went back to the top of the New York Times bestseller list. And like the original first printing of this book had black sprayed edges with white dragons along the book pages.
Yeah.
And people went crazy for it.
So those are like collector's
They
edition now.
are collectors, and people went and bought as many as they could, so much that I tried to buy one, and I was like a week too late, and I called all of the bookstores around close to us. And by close to us, I mean within 3 hours in all directions.
Yeah.
And I even called the Costco's. Like, I called everywhere to try to get one, and every
Wow.
single person was like, stop trying to get this book, we don't have it. Like,
Oh.
no one had it. The warehouses were empty.
That is insane.
It went complete. It was crazy.
Hmm.
And then everybody read it, and a lot of people still are like, here's my first edition printing selling for $500. Like,
That's
it's
insane.
still on like Macari, eBay, every other online selling site. Like,
Wow.
it's crazy. It's crazy.
So how did you find out about it?
I found out about it on my Kindle. My Kindle recommended it to me.
Oh.
I just read all of the Sarah J. Maas books, and it was like, oh, if you like this, you might want to check out Fourth Wing. And so
Yeah.
I picked it up and read it. I've loved dragon books forever. We've already said this because it's Dragon Rider Readathon.
Yeah.
And I was really excited to read this, and I finished it in about a day, I think.
Yeah.
It's a pretty big book.
It's a big book.
I sat down and I read through the whole thing.
Yeah.
And I can't remember if I recommended it to my friends or if they recommended it to me while I was reading it. Either way, a lot of my friends have read the book too, and I remember really, really loving it.
Mm-hmm.
I did not like the smut. It was so too cringy. It was too cringy and too much to me. But I really loved it.
I loved it.
No, you didn't.
Those are my favorite parts of the book.
I can't even, that, no, my universe, that's gonna be the Matrix. That's gonna break my universe.
Every fantasy book, they need their sex scenes to be just as long and complex as the action scenes. I've been saying it for years. They need to be more detailed.
I hated it. Like, I remember reading it and I was like, oh, I can't take this seriously.
Yeah.
Like, I'm laughing out loud at
I
this.
wanted to skip through it so badly.
So bad.
But then I thought, no, I'll do the right thing for the podcast so people know that I have integrity when reviewing this book.
I should have told you could skip them.
Well, the thing is, okay, I don't want to get sidetracked.
But I really, really loved the magic system. I thought was interesting. I liked the characters a lot. I liked the Dark Academia vibes. It's not it is Dark Academia,
yeah,
but there's also dragons and fantasy, so it's like split, you know what I mean? I liked the adventures that they were going on, and I liked how it kind of felt. There's a section that kind of feels like you're reading an episode of Wipeout. I don't know if you remember that.
Wipeout. Yeah.
TV show.
Yeah, it becomes totally parkour. It becomes hardcore parkour.
Yeah, but I really enjoyed it, and I read it fast, and I picked up the second one as soon as it came out.
Yeah. So were there only 2?
There are 2 currently.
But there's going to be 5.
There's planned to be 5.
Okay. So I think this book deserves the popularity that it has. I mean, it is a good book. Mm-hmm. And I can see how you would be recommended it after reading Sarah J. Maas. Mm-hmm. Like, I've read Aquitar and Throne of Glass. We've done reviews on both of those on the channel. I'm not going to eviscerate this book on the same level as Throne of Glass.
Oh, okay.
This is so much better than any Sarah J. Maas book that I've read.
I agree.
That I've read. So I really have nothing bad to say about the story. It'll be fun to talk about. Mm-hmm. The characters and the plot and the pacing and all that stuff I thought was good. Mm-hmm. I enjoyed the romance. Legitimately. And I've also, one thing that we've talked about on this podcast is I don't know if I just hate all romance in books. I'm not an aromantic person. It's just not my thing. I do like books with romance in them. Mm-hmm. My level of enjoyment is maybe a 30 to 70 split. Yeah. Percentage wise. Mm-hmm.
30 romance, 70 action, or
no,
what?
the other way around. I'm joking. No, 30% romance and 70% everything else, maybe. Yeah. Or I guess I was thinking in terms of plot, character development, and action.
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah, because if it was 30% romance, and then it's 10% world building, 40% plot, and whatever. Yeah. And then what's the math? I'm not going to do it. The second book to Assassin's Apprentice is for me, the perfect level. Yeah. Of romance, character development, plot, stuff like that. Mm-hmm. I love that book. This book is more 50-50, I'd say. Yeah. It's pretty heavy on the romance. Yeah. But she doesn't neglect things like the world building or the character development or the plot, which I really enjoyed. Mm-hmm. And I did enjoy those aspects of it. Good. Something like Sarah J. Maas, I feel is more 70-30 romance and then plot.
And the romance happens to derail the plot completely.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And it does not help if you don't like the characters to begin with. And then it's 70% of romance between 2 characters that you just do not care about. Yeah. Here I actually cared about the characters. Legitimately.
Yay!
So I guess we should talk about briefly what this book is about. Yes. Fourth Wing, the protagonist is Violet Sorengale. I'm going to have a hard time with the names. I do not know why they didn't stick with me. Mm-hmm. I didn't think they're bad. Yeah. I just have a hard time remembering them for whatever reason. She's the 3rd child of General Sorengale, who's this esteemed, renowned dragon rider. She's heartless and cruel. Mm-hmm. And she has one older sister named Mira, who's, what's the word you would use for her? She's I don't give a crap about you, Mom. I'm going to do what I want. And then she goes and beats the best dragon rider ever, which is still what her mom wants, but she's pretending to be... Mira was rebellious? I thought so. I thought she was training to be a dragon rider since she was 6 years old. Yes. But she didn't want to be a dragon rider? No, I just felt like she kind of was
I don't care about anybody else.
Oh.
I'm a cool girl.
Okay, I see.
Do you know what I mean?
I was gonna say, I wanted to say renowned again, but I don't know another word for it. But she's a
very
great
well
dragon
known.
rider.
Yes.
She's received honor for her family. And everyone worships her as like
she's
the hero of whatever fight. There's like some famous battle.
Yeah,
she won.
The popular kid.
She's super popular.
She's a cool kid.
And everyone knows who the Sorengales are because even her brother, their oldest brother, who died in battle, was also a very famous dragon rider. And he had some rare superpower.
Healing.
Mending. Excuse you. Anyway, Violet, she is the youngest, the frailest, the most underdoggiest of underdogs there is.
And she's been training to be a scribe from day one because she loves books and libraries and history.
And she was never physically capable of combat or riding a dragon. They never say outright what her condition is, but she has EDS, which is something that is a disease that apparently the author also has.
Yes.
And there have been some controversial views on the representation of that disease, which we'll talk about very briefly. We won't make a whole discussion about it. There are other places where you can find that, I think.
Yeah.
But she is training to be a scribe for her whole life. Her father, he died and he was a scribe. And after he died, Violet's mom said, okay, now you're not going to be a scribe, you're going to be a dragon rider, like all Sorengales. Now that your dad isn't around, I'm in charge of you, basically. Yeah. That's what it felt like to me. And it's a good introduction. The story throws you right into the middle of things in medias res.
Yes.
And Violet is 6 months into her training, I guess, preparing for the Riders Quadrant, which is basically she's 18 years old and she's going into college. And their version of college, they have like 4 different quadrants. There's architects and scribes and dragon riders and some other thing, healers. Oh, I think that's it.
Yeah, that is it.
I'm surprised I remembered that. And Violet, it's basically a Dark Academia story. Which Dark Academia, why is it just called Dark Academia?
I think dark has to do with the mood.
The tone?
Yeah, the tone.
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah.
It does strike a fairly dark tone. It's also pretty lighthearted and adventurous.
Yeah.
I liked the tone in this book. It was very different from Ascendant, which is the first Dragon Rider book we read for Dragon Rider June. Dragon Rider, or Ascendant is like so heartwarming and touching and earnest. Yeah. It's like the hero saves the day, he loves his dragon.
He found friends, he's maybe an orphan, but he found friends.
Yeah, found family, all that stuff. And then this book is like your family hates you, and everyone wants to kill you.
Yeah, they send you to school where you go in. She goes in thinking, well, my mom wants me to die. Yeah. So I'm gonna die here. And
your dragon, if they don't find you worthy, they will burn you to a crisp, like mercilessly. Like those things really helped sell the darker tone. Yeah. Which was a new perspective that I enjoyed on the Dragon Rider genre. Yeah. Because usually for me, when I think Dragon Riders, I think it's more like Eragon or Ascendant style tone. Where it's like they're companions and friends.
Yeah. Versus this, it's like the dragons are these like shrouded mystical beings who humans aren't worthy enough to know their true history or their true abilities. And it's like, oh, we gotta impress the dragons so you can become a dragon rider. Like you need the permission from these gigantic aging creatures. I thought it was interesting.
They're violent, cunning.
And they don't care about humans. No. They're like, oh, you don't seem worthy. Fire breath, you're dead.
Yeah. And that point of view bleeds over into the society that Violet is a part of. The people of Navarre, I think. And it kind of reminds me of like the Golds from Red Rising, where it's like they have this idea that you need to be born into greatness. And if you aren't worthy of that title, then you
might as well just die.
You might as well die. Yeah, it's like very Spartan culture-esque. Yeah. Personally, I felt like, I don't know, maybe that could have been pushed a bit farther in this book. Yeah. Where it's like, I don't know, maybe it is. Maybe it is.
I think it's pushed pretty far. We get like the whole backstory of the love interest. One of the love interests, Zayden, he and his family were like part of a uprising, revolution,
rebellion.
A rebellion. Yeah, that's what I was looking for. And all of his parents were in it, and their parents got killed and punished, and all of their children have to bear the consequence of that rebellion.
By joining the Dragon Riders.
Joining the Dragon Riders, and there's also a lot of laws and legislation that prevent them from...
They're not real
associating
citizens.
with each other, and they're like I liked that. I feel like that
so
kind of hits what you're looking for.
It was definitely there, because like they'll send their own children to go through the Dragon Riders quadrant, and they're like only 6% of people survive or whatever. So like their children die all the time.
Yeah.
They're heartless.
Yeah.
And even Violet's mom is heartless too.
Yeah, and we even do see like when these children do die, when her classmates do die, they have to burn all their belongings. They don't even get to send anything back to their families.
Yeah.
Like, it's very, like, I don't know, it's severe.
Yes. I guess what I'm trying to say is maybe the relationship between Violet and her dragon, which she doesn't bond until like a quarter of the way through the story, which I really enjoyed, maybe halfway through.
Yeah.
Is really playful. It kind
I
of felt
see
like
what you're saying. Yeah.
he was the grumpy old dad, and then
Yeah.
Violet was so sarcastic, and I think she really liked that playful relationship.
Yeah.
But it didn't feel like, oh, the dragons are not really as... At least Taryn, who's like the only dragon we get much about.
And he's this like mystical black dragon, and a black dragon hasn't bonded with a rider in years.
Yeah, of course, it's the rarest of the rare.
Yes.
Protagonist stuff.
It has to.
I know.
It has to. It's required.
It's in every story. I'm not going to complain about that.
Yeah.
It's the nature of every book.
Yeah,
right?
I see what you're saying. It's interesting to see like that relationship set up to be dragons are like puny human.
Like if you fall off your dragon's back while you're flying and you die, the dragon's like, they weren't worthy.
Yep.
But Violet falls off
Taryn.
countless times.
Yeah, yeah.
And then Taryn saves her, which I guess it's fine.
Yeah.
It's not a complaint.
No,
for me,
but
really.
it's interesting to see the comparison between she's like, oh my gosh, these scary dragons, I need to be worthy, and then she's like, hey Taryn, what's up, bro?
Yeah.
It's
She
kind of
questions him, and he's like, don't question me. I'm 1,000 years old. I'm smarter, stronger, and better than you. You do what I say.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if that's what I wanted, but he was very lenient.
Yes.
And maybe it's like, that's who he is, just as a dragon. The humans have a misconception of how violent dragons are.
Yeah.
Although dragons kill riders all the time for being unworthy, just because they're like, it's set up in the first scene where, so the first challenge that the students have to overcome is they have to walk across this parapet, which is like a balancing beam from one tower to another. That's how you qualify to become a student in the Dragon Rider Academy, basically.
Yeah.
And I really love the introduction because it establishes your character arcs and the tones really well.
Yeah.
And the world building. Like I thought it was very compelling and efficient writing and storytelling. And Violet, she crosses the parapet. She makes that scene super interesting and tense.
Yeah.
We are introduced to the love interest, the antagonists, Violet's character arc and her backstory, her family, all that stuff. Super effective. She makes it across the parapet, and then all of the students who survived, there's like 67 students who died, and only 200 survived the parapet crossing. Yeah. It's like raining and it's windy, and she gave one of her boots, which was specially designed to have traction.
It was a grippy boot.
Yeah.
She's like, no one else has hiking shoes like
whatever
me.
That means. She gives one of them to this random girl to make an alliance. And that's like kind of her Ron to her Harry.
Yes.
Her best friend in the school. Rhiannon. Yeah. And the dragons show up after all these students have qualified, and they're like, congratulations. And then dragons fly into the room, and then they're terrifying.
Yeah.
Like, people are screaming, and one of the kids runs away from them, and he gets incinerated on the spot.
Yeah, they're like, you should not be afraid. You should be afraid, but you should hold still.
Yeah.
I don't know.
You have to prove that you're not a coward.
And there's no second chance. There's no nothing. It's like, oh, you're not good enough. Bye.
Yeah.
Not even like, oh, go home and find a new path in the Scribes Quadrant. It's, you're dead.
Yeah. And that comes back again and again throughout the story as they're training to graduate. Like, some of the stuff that I was confused about is like, there's wing leaders, squadron leaders, there's district leaders.
Yes.
I don't know.
I will say, I was confused about that too.
Okay.
And when she released Iron Flame, there's a graphic image of how that fits.
Okay.
Should have been in the first book because it makes so much more sense.
Or just simplify it, because I was confused. Like Xaden, who's the antagonist / love interest, becomes Violet's wing leader, but Dane, who is also her best friend that she grew up with, the boy next door, who's also a love interest. There's kind of a love triangle thing at the beginning. He's also in charge of her. He's the squadron leader. So every wing has like squads, and then there's squad leaders. Like there's a hierarchy that was a little bit confusing.
Yes, I agree. I was confused too.
Okay. So maybe, I don't know, you probably don't have to simplify that. That's epic fantasy kind of in a nutshell.
Yeah, I think it could have been more clear potentially.
Yeah.
But
I didn't really care. I just kind of let it wash over me.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, Xaden is just ahead of Dane.
Yeah.
You're in this school for 3 years and then you graduate, right? Mm-hmm. Like some of that stuff I was confused about. Like, okay, what do you do for your first year? There's a squad test at the end of the year. Is that what we're working toward? There's a squad test and then there's a graduation.
Yeah.
You know, I was a bit confused by the order of operations.
Yeah, it wasn't very clear. And
I was just along for the ride.
It was interesting because like Violet's character is very, very intellectual. She likes to prepare. She likes to learn about stuff. So you'd think that she would be a little bit more knowledgeable about what went on. I
think she is. I don't know if it was explained to me very well.
Oh, okay.
Or if it's just I didn't pay very much attention to it.
Yeah. I didn't remember having that much. I thought it was clear enough.
Like for me, I just understood, okay, she's in a dark academia school. The goal, the overarching goal of this whole story is Violet is going to become a dragon rider. And in order to do that, you have to graduate from the school. Right? It's simple enough.
Yeah.
But there are challenges along the way.
Yeah. To be fair, I read it so fast
that most of
if I even had questions, they were answered very quickly.
Yeah.
So, you know what I mean?
Yeah. It's not really a complaint. Once again, it's just something that I didn't grasp onto while I was reading this, probably because I wasn't 100% invested in the story.
Yeah.
And that's just, you know, something that comes along with epic fantasy.
Yeah.
Is sometimes it has so much information, but it happens so quickly that it's like, I'm not going to bother explaining all this stuff to you. I'm just going to give it to you once, and you're going to have to hang on.
Pick it up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is totally fair. And I thought that stuff was done well.
Yeah.
But this book is, on paper, something that I should really like. And I did like it.
Yeah.
Like, I love My Hero Academia, which is just one big training arc about a kid becoming the greatest superhero in the world.
Yeah.
This should be like that, but for a Dragon Rider. And it's a darker tone. For some reason, I can't put my finger on it. I wonder if I had more time to think about this book.
Yeah.
I put it off for so long, which I feel bad about. But I might be able to figure out why the dark tone didn't really land for me. And maybe it's because I feel like... Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Maybe it's because I feel like something really bad should have happened to Violet. And I keep almost calling her Violent because that's a nickname that Xaden gives her.
Yeah.
I feel like something really bad should have happened to Violet, like Mira dies or something. Yeah. Which doesn't happen. Spoilers, by the way, for this book.
Yes, don't watch the rest of this video.
Like, I don't really like grimdark stuff in general, but the only exposure I have to grimdark is Game of Thrones, and that's usually what happens. Yeah. Is something horrible happens to the main character that you didn't expect.
Yeah, I wonder if part of why, like, I definitely agree with you, and I think maybe part of it is the language and the dialogue doesn't fit in the normal YA epic fantasy dialogue.
Okay.
Like I feel like a lot of the things that happen are very dark. And then you get two characters together and they're like,
and they talk like joke. Cool kids.
Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know if maybe that kind of it offset it for me at least, and maybe that's part of it, and it's probably something more than that, but
that could be part of it. Like, some of the writing did bug me.
Yes, me too.
Actually, a lot of it did.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say it's hit or miss. It's more like miss or I just didn't notice it.
Yeah.
And part of it is the style. I do feel like it's very YA.
Yeah, sometimes when I was reading this, I would just be overwhelmed with secondhand embarrassment and cringe for...
That's a great way to describe it.
An older millennial trying to relate to young millennials and the Gen Z.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. You
don't have to apologize to me.
Before. I
didn't like it either.
I do not care if the main character is in her revenge era.
Yeah, it's filled with stuff like that.
I'm sorry. I wish I was nicer, but it was cringy to me, and it just felt disconnected and It wasn't genuine because it was obviously trying to cater to that crowd.
Or maybe that's just what she really likes.
I don't know. Maybe. But
wow, it was really cringy. Like that stuff is what pulled me out of the story.
Yes.
Like when I said on paper I should like this, like if you told me Dragon Rider Dark Academia epic fantasy with lots of magic.
Yeah.
Count me in. I love all that stuff. But you package it with this like Hot Topic wrapping.
Yes.
Or whatever.
Yes.
Not Hot Topic, it's a bad example. But
no, I get it.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
And it's just not the right sell for me.
No.
So yeah, I think tonally you're right. It is kind of a mismatch.
Yeah.
Where what I expect from a dark fantasy is maybe more serious language.
Yeah.
Or maybe more authentic isn't the right word. It did feel kind of inauthentic. Unauthentic, whatever.
Yeah.
And maybe you could have done away with the dark tone stuff and it would have matched better. Or you get rid of like some of the YA teen drama soap opera language.
I can't believe he said that to me to my face with his beautiful chiseled chin.
Exactly. Tons of stuff like that. Ooh. Tons. Ooh. Like there's one paragraph in particular that stood out to me. Mm-hmm. There were a lot that I like wrote down because I wanted to remember and quote verbatim, but I'm not going to bother. Mm-hmm. I just need to let this thing go. And
This is your therapy session.
Yes, this is my therapy session. Not really, but when she first meets Xaden, so Xaden is set up as, Mira does a really great job, the author does a really great job of having Mira at the beginning of the story say, you're gonna die, I'm really worried about you, here's this magical armor, here's some magical boots, I'm gonna repack your rucksack. You can't have all these stories because she's a scribe.
Yeah.
And she says, look out for Xaden. Riorson. I'm so bad with the names.
I can't remember if there's a deer or not.
No, I don't think so.
Riorson,
whatever. And because our mother killed his father, and he's going to avenge
look for payback.
Him. Yeah, by killing every Sorengale he can find.
Yep.
And his father, I think, killed our brother.
Yes.
Okay, I couldn't remember the how that worked.
Mm-hmm.
So they're like blood feud. They're already blood rivals before they even meet. I'm like, great. We have backstory. We have character motivations. Like all that stuff was thought out, and I thought it was done well. Mm-hmm. And the characters acted accordingly to those events.
Yeah, and it's also done well because he's a couple years ahead of Violet, so he's already
a wing leader.
Yeah, he's already a wing leader.
Third-year cadet.
And he could do whatever he wanted, kind of thing. Because there's the only real rule at the school is to survive. Yeah. That's really the only rule. So he could come in and slit her throat and that'd be the end.
No. I do have a small complaint about that rule thing, but we'll get into it.
Yeah.
You're right.
But it's good setup.
Yes, it is a good setup. Mm-hmm. And when she meets Xaden, she's like, or when she meets him, she doesn't know that it's Xaden, but she recognizes the rebellion tattoo. Mm-hmm. So all the children of the parents who rebelled against the Navarre Empire, their children were marked by dragons with magic. Yeah. And whenever a dragon marks a human, they get a cool tattoo. Yeah. So I liked that stuff. I thought that was really cool. And all the rebellion children have similar like silvery tattoos that wrap around their bulging biceps and their rippling, muscly backs. Yes. This book made me want to work out. She meets Xaden and she's like, he was hot. Hotter than heck. So hot that you didn't want to touch him with a 10-foot pole because the pole would burn because he was so hot. He radiated heat all over the place. He was a hottie patati, a cutie patootie. And I was like, okay, number one, F off. Number two, thank you for establishing this tone early so that I know that I can check out now and I'll be happy. Because at that point, I was just out of the story. Yeah. Yep. For me. Yes. Okay, it's a personal opinion.
Yes. I think I probably didn't hate it as much as you, but I definitely didn't like it.
Yeah. Okay.
It's too much to me. It's too much.
Yeah. It is pretty cringy. I would say tone that dial is at like an 11. I don't know.
Maybe 0.5.
Maybe 0.5. I will also say this. this is like an apocryphal story, so I don't know if it's true, but I heard on the internet about a person who went to art school, and they turned in this unicorn painting with like flowers and glitter and rainbows and all this stuff. And their art teacher said, I hate this. Next week, you need to add like 10 times more glitter, more unicorns, more rainbows, more clouds, make it even girlier or whatever. Like lean into that style. Because, and that was a really important lesson for her to learn, which is you need to lean into the things that you enjoy because you need to scare off people like me who aren't going to be your core audience.
That's a good point.
So I think that's part of why Fourth Wing is so popular, is because it does feel like the Gideon the Ninth type of thing where it's like, this is the story that she wanted to write, regardless of who would fall in love with it.
Yes.
Where it's like, take those things to the nth degree.
That makes sense. I didn't think of it like that, but I definitely agree with that.
Yeah.
Especially
because you shouldn't be writing this book for me.
Yeah, reading the second book too, it leans even more into that.
Yeah.
And even I'm like, ooh.
So maybe it's something they love, honestly, and their true core audience loves that too.
Well, Rebecca Yarros is primarily a romance writer, just regular contemporary romance. That's most of what she's written.
Not epic fantasy.
This is her first fantasy she's ever written too.
Really?
Yeah.
That's surprising because the epic fantasy elements I thought were really good.
Yeah, I did too. I liked it. Like, and I haven't read as much epic fantasy as you have, but it's a fun, like, I liked it. I didn't know what else to say.
No, that's okay. But like, lean into those aspects of your story that people like me will find cringy.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to scare someone away from what they really love.
Yeah. Because
of your own preconceived notions and your own worldview. Like, growing up, I always heard from artists, because we're a family of artists, right? Like, anime, don't draw anime, anime's bad art. And now, like, anime is so cool and so popular. Yep. People are finding stories that have been written in Korea and Japan from like 20 to 40 years ago that are so revolutionary and amazing and different and unique. And now people are trying to copy anime art styles. And it's like, oh, wow. Okay, so it's just the style that scared me from this thing that I didn't understand. Yeah. But now that I understand what they're going with, I can appreciate what they're doing. Yeah. And so I feel that way about Fourth Wing, right? Even down to the cringy, like, Twilight YA dialogue and the smutty sex scenes. Like, that stuff is not for me. Yes. Count me out. Yes. But it's obviously popular for a reason. Yeah. And I say that they should lean into it.
Yeah. Why not? Because obviously she found her target audience.
Clearly.
And she's not worried about anything in that arena anymore. Yeah. Like, it's interesting. She published this one and it got so huge that she published book 2 6 months later.
6 months later.
6 months later.
Wow.
And it's even bigger than this book. And
that's impressive.
A lot of people had a lot of issues with that.
With how quickly they were released?
Yeah, and there were some issues with book 2 that kind of seemed like...
Was it rushed?
It was rushed. It seemed like that. It seemed like that when I read it too. Like, there were even a lot of grammar errors. Like,
what?
A lot of grammar errors. As in, like, it doesn't matter. But it's interesting because now book 2 came out. Everybody really loved or hated it very loudly on the internet.
Controversial. Yes. Or polarizing, I guess.
As most things are. And now book 3 is over a year after book 2.
So maybe she took some of that feedback.
Yeah, I think she did. And she probably also was like, if you're going to hate it anyway, I want to take my time.
That would be really hard. It would be really difficult to be in her position. Yeah. Where it's like, you are insanely popular overnight. And then everyone is criticizing everything you've ever done. Yeah. I would really struggle with that personally.
Yeah, and I mean, I think, I'm not completely sure, but I'm pretty sure she probably rushed that book too to try to get it out and on shelves to an audience, and then to have
who knows what pressure she had to do that.
And and then to have a lot of people, like some people even said, you used AI to write this. Yikes. I don't think she did. I do not think she did.
But when you're that popular and you're on the internet, you're going to hear everything.
Yeah, so I hope she has a good break.
Especially if you're a popular woman romance writer. Yeah. Right? You're going to hear some horrible stuff.
Yeah, so I hope she's taking a good break. She is back writing now, but she took a couple months and was like...
Good. They don't deserve that criticism at all.
No one does. We're humans, people.
Yes, because I do think it is a good book. Like I said, it's just not for me.
Yeah.
We could talk briefly. Well, maybe we shouldn't get into that. Well, it is a good segue. The controversial stuff.
Yeah,
EDS.
I think so. Yeah.
So I don't know what the name of that syndrome is.
So Rebecca Yarros has Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. It's a connective tissue disorder that affects all the connective tissue in your body.
Mm-hmm.
You are made up of connective tissue, and there's
so it
a lot
sounds
of
pretty
different.
debilitating.
There's a spectrum, as
Mm-hmm.
with most diseases, especially chronic illnesses. And I have EDS myself. Mine isn't that severe. I deal with pretty moderate symptoms that I can deal with day to day. But I know Rebecca Yarros. She's pretty transparent online about her own physical health and mental health. And, like, she has to spend a lot of days hooked up to an IV in bed because she needs extra help just living, At least from what I've seen on Instagram. I don't know everything. And I don't want to speak for her. But Violet in this book, they never blatantly say what disabilities or disorders she has.
And it's a fantasy world, so maybe they have different word for it.
Exactly.
They just say she's frail and weak.
Yeah.
And that's an important part of her character arc.
It is. And she dislocates her bones a lot. Like, she dislocates her shoulder really frequently.
She breaks her
and
arm.
her knees are bad, and her ankles are bad, and her, everything's bad.
In the parapet, she slips, hits her knee on the ground, and she has to wrap it up.
Yeah.
And while I was reading it, I thought, that seems a little severe. But then I realized later on it's part of a condition that she has.
Yeah. I really liked reading it. I thought it was pretty good most of the time. One of the biggest issues that people seem to have over it is how she suddenly doesn't have EDS when she's having sex. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's...
when it's like the sex is as competitive as her dragon riding?
Yes, and all of a sudden she's fine and she can be like...
Yeah.
And have no issues? Like, that's something...
When it's like she's the victim of this human battering ram who's this like 6'7", 300-pound muscled freak.
Yes.
And she's fine.
And she's suddenly fine.
Yeah.
I think that's a good point.
Yeah.
I also don't know everything, and I don't struggle as severely as other people do with EDS. So I don't know. I don't want to...
I don't either.
So
I think part of the problem is, and we won't talk about this too much, I don't know what, like, anything about EDS, and other than knowing you, reading this book is like the only exposure I'll have to understanding what this disease is or what it's like to have. So the problem is maybe I'll meet someone later in life who has severe EDS and I'll be like, oh, it's not that bad. You just have to work out a bit and you'll be fine.
Yeah.
Which is kind of how it comes across in this book, where, she struggles with frail joints.
Yeah.
But she works out in the weight room. And suddenly she can do these crazy acrobatics.
Yeah.
Go through these action scenes, these action/sex scenes, and be fine. And I think that's part of what people were saying is a problem with the story is that it's not a very accurate or a dishonest representation of EDS.
Especially like looking at recovery for EDS kind of stuff. That seems like something the doctor would tell you to do.
Yeah.
You just need to work out more. Like, when I sleep, I have to be careful with how I position my elbows because I hyperextend my elbows in my sleep. Yeah. And it really hurts and it sucks. Like, it doesn't matter if I go like this a little bit more. Right. I'm still going to have those issues. Or, Yeah. That's a good point.
Yeah. So that's all we really have to say about that. Yeah. It is also, like we said, an important part of her character arc, which is she was born to be a scribe. Yeah. That's what everyone has always told her, except for her mother. Even her sister, Mira, whose relationship with Violet I really enjoyed. Yeah. I thought was very sweet. And even her best friend that she grew up with, Dane, who's the boy next door. He's the love triangle thing. Yes. He's very handsome, but still boyish. But he's grown out of his baby fat, and he has a little chin strap beard, which is not cringy at all. He tells her, he's in the Dragon Rider Squadron as well. He's a second year, I believe, and he's a squadron leader. He's risen through the ranks quickly, but he's all about law and order and rules, which I liked his character. He's a character archetype that I really like, which is the strict rule keeper. Yeah. There's a very fun character in My Hero Academia who's like that. Tinya Ida, he's my favorite. He wears glasses. He loves rules, but he's not a jerk. And Dane is kind of a jerk.
Most rule followers are jerks.
It's true. They are. Well, they're lovable. You have to understand that it comes from a good place.
Yes.
But that doesn't excuse the mistakes that they make with other people.
Yes.
And Dane, he is very controlling of Violet.
Even from day one, he's like, pack your bags. I'm going to get you out of here.
And at first, it's understandable. Because even Violet doesn't want to be a dragon rider. Yeah. She's forced to become a dragon rider. She doesn't think she's capable of it. So her character arc really is about finding her potential. Yeah. What she's capable of doing. Yeah. And not letting her limits define her. And I think that is the intention of writing about a main character with EDS. So even if her heart is in the right place, with like, I want to write about a character who has this disability and it gets in the way of their life, but they succeed despite them. Yeah. Or they don't let their disabilities define them. I think that's what they were trying to say with the story.
Yeah, I think so too. I think, I don't know, it's complicated. Disabilities are complicated, especially like
who knows how severe it was for her.
You know? And she does still struggle. Like, she still does deal with EDS in the second book, too. So, like, it's nice that it's not just, like, figured out and solved and done. Yes. But still,
she needed a character arc, right? Yeah. Where it's like, that is the story. I was reminded so much of My Hero Academia throughout this book, which I love My Hero Academia. I talk about it all the time. And I think the problem with having a character like Violet who overcomes her EDS in the way that she does for this book is that it comes at the cost of doing some harm to that community. Exactly. But once again, I'm not a member of that community.
I don't know. And also, disabilities are so personal to each individual who deals with them. You know, something that might work for someone might have the opposite effect for someone else. So even still, if you were a member of that community, you still can do harm without realizing it.
So the message is positive, right? Where it's like, even if I think about this Minecraft YouTuber who I love. His name is Good Times with Scar. He's got a degenerative disorder, I think. I can't remember what it's called. But he needs a wheelchair and he needs a breathing apparatus. He's in the hospital all the time. He has a similar message where it's like, don't let your disabilities set you back from achieving your dreams. Yeah. And he is a super popular Minecraft YouTuber. He spreads so much positivity in the world. And I love him. He's the best. Yeah. So I like that same message for a character in a book like this. Yeah. And I feel like the ball is kind of dropped halfway through. Yeah. So I don't know what they're really trying to say with that. Well, I guess I do know what they're trying to say, right? It's supposed to be that positive message. Don't let your limits define you. Yeah. But what's the right thing to say? I don't know.
Yeah, me either. The second book is dedicated to everybody who struggles with that.
Oh, okay. Cool.
People with chronic illnesses are called zebras. It's like that's the term for it. There's a reason for it. I don't know what it is, but she dedicates her second book to that. Okay. Which is, I don't know how to do it right. I don't know.
I don't know either, and I didn't plan on talking about it for this long, but
but it's interesting.
Integral to her character arc. Yeah. So Violet, basically, and this is where we could talk about the love triangle again, because I did hint towards it. She is torn between listening to Dane, giving up on becoming a dragon rider, and being a scribe, which is like giving up in her own mind. Yeah. A lot of her internal conflict, I thought this was done quite well. It's not stated explicitly what she is struggling with or what she wants. But it's there in my own headcanon. Yeah. And it is brought up occasionally throughout the book, like she's trying to become a dragon rider to please her mom. But she'll never earn her mother's approval. So that comes up occasionally throughout the story. Or if she decides to go to the scribe's quadrant, that's her giving up on her potential. And she feels like she can become a dragon rider. Yeah. Like she never says that out loud, but that is part of her struggle. So I thought they handled her character conflict quite well. Yeah,
I like it a lot, and I think that part of what makes it good too is that her choosing which way to go on that really affects the relationships that she has.
Absolutely.
Like it's either, okay, I'm going to go with Dane, or okay, I'm going to go with Xaden. Yes. But it works well with her internal conflict. Yeah. And adding her dragons into that adds to it too.
Yes. Wow, there's so much to talk about this book. That's something that I really loved about this book that I thought was done super well, that other books that I've read, like Throne of Glass specifically, I think they were trying to do a love triangle thing, but we're not going to get into it. This is a really good example of a love triangle, which I liked. And I think the term is a bit of a misnomer, but we're not going to worry about that. Yeah. Where Dane represents ideologically maybe giving up in Violet's mind.
Going back to the version of Violet that Dane sees.
Yes.
Or the version that she lets herself be because it's the safe version.
It's the safe choice. But her mother won't let her do that. She's forcing her to go to the Dragon Rider Squadron because every Soaring Gale is a Dragon Rider.
Yep.
So Violet is constantly worried about, am I ready to become a Dragon Rider? Am I strong enough? And that's what Xaden represents.
Yeah.
Which is, don't coddle her, she won't grow. So I really loved that. They represented two different sides of her character. Yeah. Her misbelief and her theme, right?
Yeah.
What she's capable of achieving and the things that hold her back from achieving what she wants.
Yeah.
Which could be either A, becoming a Dragon Rider to earn my mom's approval. Well, it doesn't have to be an A or B thing. It could be a combination.
Yeah.
Or B, proving to myself that I am stronger than my disability.
Yeah. And actually putting the work in, too. Like not just trying to float by and get by the skin of her teeth. She's like, hey, maybe I'll actually try.
Yeah. And I thought that arc was done really well. It was paced very nicely.
Yeah.
It has a satisfying conclusion. It kind of concludes itself at like the 3/4 mark of the story. And the last quarter was a bit of a drag for me.
Yeah.
But it's a minor issue. There are some other things, like there's some world building mysteries and some character backstory stuff that we learn about at the end of the story.
Yeah.
That carried me through. But Violet's character arc does resolve itself relatively quickly.
Yeah.
At least the relationship conflict does.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And it kind of seems like there should be something else internally that's driving her to get her to the end of the book, if not into the next book, instead of just being like, oh, well, I got a boyfriend now. And I got a dragon.
Yeah.
I got 2, actually.
It's not too bad, though. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because while she does, at the 3/4 mark, choose Xaden over Dane, and she still has things to learn and goals to accomplish. Like, she still has to do the final graduation test at the end of the book. Her relationship with Xaden is not entirely resolved.
Yeah.
Like, Xaden is holding things back from her, even though she's irresistibly attracted to him. And she's told him...
and we haven't even mentioned...
What?
Their dragons are mated.
Yeah, we'll get into the dragons in a second here. But Xaden, he doesn't tell her everything, but she tells him everything. So at the end of the story, there is a bit of a cliffhanger there where it's like maybe the relationship is hanging in the balance.
Yeah.
So while her character arc internally is more or less resolved at the 3/4 mark, there's still some relationship conflict.
Yeah.
There's still some world building stuff, which is like their government isn't telling them the truth. She lives in like a fascistic authoritarian regime underneath an authoritarian regime, and they keep secrets from their people. Yeah. And she's a scribe and she knows what their history tells them. But then she meets Xaden and the other rebels and they tell her, it's not quite the truth. So that stuff was also done really well. There's a lot of different plates that she's juggling. Yeah. And I thought it was done quite well.
I did too. I enjoyed all the different aspects, and I feel like sometimes when authors have that many things going on, it can feel kind of choppy and disjointed. Yeah. But I think she did a good job at transitioning between different things and back into other ideas and netting them all together very well.
Yes, remembering to handle like, okay, I have a little subplot where it's like she's learning about her nation is not entirely truthful, and maybe her mother's not a very good, well, she knows she's not a very good person, but her government is dishonest to their own people about what's going on outside their boundaries. And the world building magic stuff, like she has to handle, okay, what are the skills she learns to become a dragon rider? She has to do this parkour test, parkour, and she has to learn this magical ability, and she's got, well, I'm not going to say that, she's got dragon powers that she has to learn how to do, and you've got to handle the love triangle stuff, and you've got to handle the internal character arc.
Yeah, there's a lot going on.
And I think she does a good job of handling it. Yeah. Like, my number one problem with books, I will always say this is the number one problem that authors make, is they don't know how to handle scope. Yeah. You have to know what's within your skill set, and then write to that strength. Yeah. Like, Hunger Games is the best example of this. Hunger Games, the first book, 2 characters.
Perfect.
There's no bad guys. You can't write villains. I'm sorry. And it's a story about surviving in the woods. And it's great.
Yeah.
And in the third book, it becomes more of an epic rebellion story.
Uh-huh.
And it's like, there's too many plates to juggle. This book, it's big.
Yeah.
The scope is big, but they can handle it.
I think so, too.
Yeah. Just stop trying to sound like a YA teen drama.
That's the biggest thing. I mean, like, you do you.
Yeah,
write whatever you want to write.
For me, that's what threw me out of the story.
Loud.
Yeah, I laughed out loud several times. And I was like, I listened to the audiobook for like the second half. I was like this for most of it, just laughing.
Oh, my
like,
gosh.
I can't believe you're writing this.
I have not listened to the audiobook. I think that might be worse than reading it.
I don't know. Because at least with reading it, I would have been like, close the book, like pull my eyes away. At least with the audiobook, it was being forced into my brain. And I'm talking about the sex scenes, folks. Oh my goodness gracious. I have never read smut like this before, and it's straight up smut.
It's bad.
Yeah, like these
I
sex
guess
scenes
maybe
are
I shouldn't say it's bad, but I didn't
that's what you
it.
like, that's fair. If you'll enjoy that, then go ahead. I have no problems with that. It's just not what I enjoy reading in a book.
Yeah, I definitely, it was my least favorite part of the book.
Yeah. Oh yeah, mine too. I don't know if we need to talk about that aspect anymore.
I don't think so.
But
we can if you want to.
No, I would like to forget that it ever exists.
Okay.
But I think it was like not cattle prod. I think it was branded into my brain.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm so sorry.
It's cringy. No, it's okay. You don't have to apologize for it. No one has to apologize for that. But be unapologetic about it, I would say.
Okay.
That's the unicorn glitter painting of this book.
Yeah.
If that's what people love, then lean into it. It's just, that's not my crowd.
Yeah.
We should talk about, there was one thing I mentioned earlier, the rules of the school. So the school is vicious.
Yes.
It's cutthroat.
Yes.
Cadets can kill other cadets to get ahead because they believe in survival of the fittest.
Yeah.
And we meet one character at the very beginning, Jack Barlow, who wants to kill everybody.
Yeah.
He's like this violent psychopath.
Yeah.
And he especially hates Violet Sorrengail because she's a Sorrengail.
Yeah.
And she's ostensibly the top dog.
Even though she's weak.
Yes, because of the reputation of her family. Everyone's after her, especially Xaden. And this Jack Barlow guy. And he tries to push her off the parapet. Like in the first scene, it's great.
Yeah.
And throughout the book, cadets will try to kill each other and Violet. There's a great scene where a bunch of cadets break into her room at night while she's asleep. And her sister Mira tells her to wear her armor even when she's sleeping. This scale armor.
I pressed that button with my toe on accident.
51 minutes. I'll remember that. There's this great scene where Violet is attacked in the middle of the night by a bunch of cadets. And Mira tells her to always wear her armor. It's like this special dragon scale armor. And there's like several of them trying to kill her because she's bound to a dragon.
Yes.
And they try to kill her to make a bond with her dragon.
Yeah, it's said multiple times that people are like, oh, well, if I kill Violet, then her dragon will want to bond with me because I was better than her.
Yeah, and the dragons will respect that.
Yeah, and it's not an opposed idea. Like, people are like,
that's fair enough. If you can do that, then you should, because it means you were stronger, and it makes the wing stronger. It's all about survival of the fittest. So they come in to attack her at night. They fail. One of her powers manifests itself. It's like pretty close towards the 3-quarter mark of the book. And then the next day, they have this big meeting where it's like, we need to discuss this great crime that was committed.
Yeah.
Where cadets broke into someone's room and they tried to kill her at night. Because it's this grave sin. You can never, ever, ever do that.
Yeah. It's like, you can do whatever you want unless someone's taking a nap.
Yes.
You cannot enter their bedroom when they're sleeping.
While they're sleeping. That's not fair.
That's too far.
That's against the rules.
That's going too far.
And the person who organized this coup, basically, or this assassination, I'll say it's not a coup, she's burned alive, where it's like, we have to kill you for this. Yeah. And so I'm like, what? You just said at the beginning that, like, anything goes at the school.
Yeah.
And there's, like, weird rules occasionally where it's like, well, you can't kill them while they're asleep. You also can't kill them while they're eating breakfast, dinner, or lunch, or brunch. You can't kill them here. You can't fight them here. You can't, unless you can kill them when they're fighting in the mat, if you're from another squad, but not when you're in the same squad. It's like these weird stipulations.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense.
That don't make any sense.
Yeah.
Like, I think it'd be so much easier if you're just like, it's a free-for-all.
Yeah.
Or you say, cadets can't kill each other, but you can break some rules.
Yeah.
And I think they hold this big jury at this point in the book for some other reason. It's not just because they tried to kill her at night, I think, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
But from what I remember, that's like the only reason why they hold this court.
I can't remember.
It really doesn't matter that much.
Yeah.
But some of the rules are slippery, which was confusing for me.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I didn't really care that much, but you're right.
Yeah, I could tell you were very invested in the story, which makes sense.
Yeah.
Violet's character arc is really satisfying. The romance is interesting because it's driven by internal conflict. That's the key.
Yes.
That's the foundation it's built on. It's all about Violet, struggling between falling back to her past and what's comfortable and
challenging herself
and achieving her potential. And that stuff's great.
Yeah, and it's fun to read as reader.
Yeah.
Fun to read as reader.
There's one last thing I want to talk about. The dragons.
Yes.
So this is very different from Ascendant in terms of like how the dragons are perceived in this world.
Yes.
In Ascendant, they're seen more as companions. In this book, it's more like dragons need riders to use their magic to its fullest potential.
And it's the only way that humans can get magic too, really.
Yeah, it's more like humans need dragons more than dragons need humans. It's almost like the dragons are their rulers.
Yeah.
And they're very severe and exacting, and they're looking for the strongest humans to ride them, to wield their magic. And some dragons have had like several riders throughout their lives.
Yeah.
They're hundreds of years old. They don't care about their riders.
Yeah.
And I appreciated that different perspective.
Well, I also like they have a rule where a dragon without its rider is a tragedy. A rider without its dragon is dead. Yeah. It's like the classic Fourth Wing line. Where,
it's a nice line.
Where, dragons can have multiple riders, and it does affect them, and we get more about the rules on that in book 2. But if you're bonded with a dragon and your dragon dies, then you're gone. Which it helps emphasize the idea that you're getting at, where the dragons are kind of more powerful. Well, I mean, of course they are more powerful, but like socially too.
Yeah, they don't care about the humans really that much, except for Taryn and Darna. Well, we're gonna spoil that. I'll give it away.
Spoiler.
I have to say,
I already said she had 2 dragons.
Yeah, we have to talk about it because I thought it was done super effectively. For me at least. Yeah. And it illustrates a great Brandon Sanderson principle.
Yay!
And we can't do this podcast without me talking about Brandon Sanderson. So it's not until like a quarter of the way through the book, maybe even halfway through the book, when they finally bond with their dragons. And I really liked that slow burn.
I did too.
Like, she doesn't get a dragon until halfway through the book. She doesn't even look forward to it, really. She's mostly terrified.
She thinks she's going to die. I liked that, too. I like how they set up this huge, big thing of bonding with the dragon, but they prepare them for that huge thing. Sometimes it's like, and then chapter 3, they found a dragon. Instead of, like, they really work towards it, which was interesting to me. Yeah,
I enjoyed that, too. Like, you need to be prepared to ride a dragon. Physically, mentally, emotionally. You need to be brave. You need to be able to look a dragon in the eye. That's not a specific thing, but metaphorically, you need to be able to look a dragon in the eye, stand toe to toe with this ferocious beast, and then it'll find you worthy to ride it. And when they first go to like dragon lessons, they have some classes where it's like, let's learn about the dragons. This is a red dragon. There's tons of them. This is a green dragon. There's tons of them. Here's the black dragon. There's only one that we know of. Yeah. And I'm like, well, that's the one she's going to bond. Yep. And there's a lot of tropey stuff like that. Like I had a feeling that the dragon she would bond, that dragon would also be mates with Xaden's dragon. Yes. So when that happened, I was like, oh, of course. Yep. Not a big deal. It's called the threshing when you bond with a dragon, when you find a dragon to bond with. And it's not until after you pass through a parkour gauntlet your entire squad has to pass. It's like this death-defying thing, and some of her classmates
It's the
die.
Wipeout episode.
That's the Wipeout episode. And she like enters this area on the mountain,
It's like
I guess.
the Dragon Veil. It's their territory.
Oh, that's the actual veil?
Yeah, it's a part of it.
It's a part of the veil.
Yeah, it's a part of Veil. It's not their mystical hidden part, but it's the part where all the dragons are there. If they want to bond, they go. And then all of the dragon riders go and hunt for dragons, kind of.
Yeah, or look for dragons to bond with. And they see this one teeny tiny dragon. And one thing that Violet struggles with in the parkour section is this ramp that's supposed to simulate climbing up a dragon's leg and mounting, and she's too small, too short to do it. And Xaden tells her to break the rules, think outside the box. She breaks the rules. And people are like, you can't break the rules, but I thought there were no rules. There's tons of rules to keep here, but it doesn't matter if you break them. And they see this tiny golden dragon. They're like, oh, it's too small to ride. Oh, it's perfect for Violet. And I was like, oh, interesting. So the black dragon was a red herring. She's going to ride the gold dragon.
Yep.
And then Jack Barlow and his crew of baddies are like, we need to thin her. We're going to kill the small gold dragon because it's the weakest.
Yeah.
And of course, Violet has to stand up for it. Makes perfect sense for her character. Felt an emotional connection there. Where Violet has also always been picked on for being the weakest. And the shortest. And she believes in this golden dragon. It doesn't deserve to die.
She's like, this dragon could become big and strong one day. Also, she's kind of like, you guys, why would you kill a dragon? That's something that I also was like, these guys don't deserve to be dragon riders because they would kill one.
Yeah. I think it kind of makes sense because they do establish the ideology of like the strongest survival of the fittest. Yeah. And they just want to cull the herd no matter what. It does kind of feel random.
Yeah. Like, it makes sense. I just don't like it.
What do you mean?
Malorie doesn't like when people kill dragons.
Oh, okay.
It's not a problem with the book.
Okay, it's a, they did an effective job of making them feel like bad guys. Yeah. Okay. For me, from a story perspective, it felt a little bit like it came out of the blue. But it's not a huge deal. Yeah. It's not a gripe that I'm going to, like, die on that hill for. Anyway, they try to kill this golden dragon. Violet stands up for it. It's a feathertail. No one's ever bonded with it. I thought feathertail was a cool name for that dragon. And I liked that it actually had feathers on its tail.
I did too.
And she kills one of the three that try to attack her. Anyway, she wins the fight, and then this black dragon shows up and says, I'm going to bond with you. I was like, oh, the black dragon wasn't red herring. The gold one was. She bonds with the black dragon. She flies away. And then she makes it back to, like, the winner's table where all the other dragon riders who finally bonded during the threshing meet. And everyone's like, ooh, Violet bonded with the black dragon. It's the big baddie. He hasn't bonded with a dragon in, like, 100 years or whatever. Yeah. He hasn't bonded with a rider in, like, 100 years. And then the gold dragon comes up and says, I'm going to bond with you, too. And I was like, what?
Crazy, 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 crazy.
That's wild. So for me, I think that was, like, the peak of the book. Yeah. That was the coolest part. Yeah. It felt like a climactic moment in the middle of the story, which was cool. The downside is that the rest of the book kind of went like, kind of plateaued a little bit. Yeah. Not a bad thing. Yeah. But the Brandon Sanderson principle is this. It's about subverting expectations. And they did a really good job of it. Like, I really haven't read a book where it's been done this effectively before, where I didn't see it coming. I'm bad at seeing these things coming. But you promise, for example, a toy car for your son on Christmas. And then on Christmas Day, you give them an actual car. Yeah. Right? So you overpromise. And that was really effective here, in my opinion. And it was very cool. I liked
it. I thought it was interesting. I also just think it's pretty cool.
To have two dragons? Yeah. And then she has two magical powers.
I know it's stupid. I mean, like, actually, it's not stupid. I just liked it.
It comes with the book, right?
Yeah,
it's dorky.
Yeah.
Or it comes with the territory.
And she, of course, bonded with the two most rare dragons in the Vale. Yeah. Big surprise.
Yeah. You could see it coming for those reasons, but I really didn't expect her to bond with two dragons.
Yeah, me either.
It's a cool way to break that rule.
I had a similar experience of I was like, oh, she's going to have the big dragon. And I was like, oh, but she's going to have the little one because she's the little dragon. And they're going to be super powerful together. And then I was like, wah! Yeah. Yeah, so that was the high moment for me. And I also love that it was motivated
by Violet's character to defend that tiny dragon.
Yeah, you can totally see why she does it.
That was a great setup,
fantastic.
Too. Mm-hmm. That was also very My Hero Academia-esque for me, where it's like, Deku always stands up for the little guy.
Yep.
Because he was born without a quirk. Mm-hmm. And so that's his motivation for becoming a superhero. So he wants to defend people who are defenseless like himself.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, it just makes your heart break. It's so sweet. I think that's pretty much everything that I wanted to talk about.
Is this your favorite book?
I'm sorry, but no. But I would recommend it. Yeah,
okay,
I would.
Good.
Especially if I know who the person I'm recommending the book for likes.
Yes, that's very important.
Like if they're more like me, where they love their Red Rising, they like their lightsabers and their laser swords, laser guns.
Yes.
Then I would say
probably
maybe not. But if you want to, if you're a reader like yourself, then yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Is this one of your favorite books?
Yeah. I really like this book. I still like this book, and I'm excited to read the rest of the series.
Okay. Well, good.
Yeah.
Would you recommend it?
Yeah, I would. Probably similar.
You're supposed to say no.
Thing. No! Nobody else read it! Gatekeep!
I've been training you in comedy for years.
No, you haven't.
Yes, I have. I've been training you in comedy for years, and you failed me.
You're talking to the to the 2-year-long captain of Snow College Improv. Let them improvise, Tanner.
Yeah, well, you're welcome for giving you that opportunity. But you've still failed at this final hurdle.
Yep, I guess that's it for a podcast. It won't go on until after we die.
Yep. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed, please leave a comment. What did you think about this book?
Yep, and if you want to hear more about our other Dragon Rider episodes, we will be doing 4 more episodes about Dragon Riders.
4 more Dragon Riding books for this month. We've already done Ascendant. Go ahead and listen to that if you'd like.
Yep.
Subscribe and leave a comment if you haven't already. Or leave a like. Mm-hmm. I'm all over the place today.
That's okay.
Thank you all for watching.
Bye.